You think the AI revolution is built in labs you will never see. Code, genius, algorithms racing forward. But every promise you hear depends on something far more fragile. A physical place. A factory so precise that a single mistake can freeze the future you expect to arrive. You assume intelligence runs the world. The truth is colder. Nothing digital survives without one company quietly manufacturing reality itself. And almost no one notices it. If that factory stops, the future you trust simply stops too. That factory sits on a small island most people only notice during geopolitical tension. Its name rarely appears in consumer conversations. Yet, it manufactures the chips that allow AI models to think, cars to drive, and networks to function. This company does not design intelligence. It manufactures possibility. TSMC was built on a simple belief the world underestimated: that the most valuable power would not be software, platforms, or apps. It would be precision. Repeatable, flawless precision at a scale no competitor could match. While tech giants chased headlines and innovation cycles, TSMC chased yield. Percentages invisible to consumers. Margins measured in atoms. Over decades, those tiny advantages compounded into something enormous. A manufacturing monopoly hiding in plain sight. You rarely think about fads, clean rooms, or supply chains. But every digital comfort you rely on passes through this bottleneck. And bottlenecks decide who moves forward and who waits. When shortages hit, anxiety spreads faster than information. Companies panic. Governments intervene. Consumers feel the delay, but rarely see the cause. Control does not come from demand alone. It comes from owning the narrowest point in the system. TSMC quietly sits at that point today. And when one factory controls the bottleneck, power shifts faster than anyone expects. You're taught to believe technology leadership comes from invention, from brilliant ideas, from visionary founders changing the world with breakthroughs. Manufacturing is supposed to be secondary, replaceable, something you outsource once innovation is done. TSMC shattered that belief quietly. Instead of competing with Apple, Nvidia, or AMD, it made a different choice. It would never design chips, never sell products to consumers, never build a brand people loved. It would do one thing so well that no one else could afford to do it at scale: manufacture the most advanced chips on Earth, over and over, with almost zero error. At this level, progress is not measured in years. It is measured in nanometers. Each step forward requires cleaner rooms, more expensive tools, and more brutal discipline. A single fabrication plant costs more than the GDP of some countries, and once built, it must run perfectly every day to justify its existence. Most companies cannot survive that risk. They diversify, they compromise, they cut corners. TSMC did the opposite. It doubled down on focus. By refusing to compete with its customers, it became trusted by all of them. Every major chip designer could rely on the same factory without fear of betrayal. That neutrality became its moat. You assume the AI race is about who builds the smartest models. But the real race is about who can physically produce the chips those models require. Ideas move fast. Atoms do not. And once manufacturing becomes the limit, intelligence stops being the deciding factor. Here is the fear most people never articulate. What happens when progress depends on something you cannot access, influence, or replace? TSMC is not just advanced. It is irreplaceable in the short and medium term. Other foundries exist, but none operate at the same scale with the same consistency. Years of experience are baked into every process. You cannot copy that with money alone. This creates a quiet vulnerability in the global system. Entire industries plan their futures around one supply chain. AI roadmaps, defense strategies, economic forecasts all assume that this factory keeps running without disruption. You feel this fear indirectly. When products are delayed, when prices rise, when headlines warn about shortages, you are sensing a system stretched too tightly. Governments sense it too. That is why chip manufacturing is no longer treated as a business. It is treated as a national security asset. Subsidies, incentives, and political pressure all orbit the same truth. Control the factory and you influence the future. TSMC never asked for this role, but systems do not care about intent. They care about dependency. And dependency always creates leverage. Because when the world depends on you, neutrality becomes power whether you want it or not. Here is the hidden rule that reshapes how power actually works. Scarcity does not just raise prices. It reorganizes authority. TSMC's real leverage is not technology alone. It is time. Years of accumulated learning embedded into machines, processes, and people. You cannot rush this kind of mastery. Even with unlimited money, competitors face a wall made of experience. This is where the system flips. You assume markets reward innovation fastest, but at extreme precision, markets reward reliability more than brilliance. A slightly smarter design means nothing if it cannot be manufactured at scale. TSMC understood this before the world did. So instead of chasing visibility, it invested in invisibility. Processes no one talks about. Yields no one understands. Failure rates so low, they feel abstract. That discipline produced a strange outcome. The more advanced the world becomes, the fewer options it has. Each new AI breakthrough narrows the list of factories capable of producing it. And the narrowest point in the system quietly accumulates power. This is why TSMC does not need to negotiate loudly. It does not threaten. It does not posture. Its leverage is structural. When supply is limited and demand is existential, choice disappears. You may believe power belongs to those who move fastest, but systems reward those who become unavoidable. TSMC became unavoidable by mastering scarcity without exploiting it. And that balance is rare. Once scarcity controls time, every decision downstream begins to change. This is where the story turns back toward you, because TSMC's lesson is not about semiconductors. It is about positioning inside systems. Most people chase visibility. They want to be seen, credited, recognized. But the most resilient power often lives where attention is lowest. At the constraint, at the bottleneck, at the place everything must pass through. You may feel behind because you are not the most innovative person in the room, not the loudest, not the fastest. TSMC shows a different path. Reliability compounds when others chase novelty. The company did not try to control customers. It controlled outcomes. By becoming the safest option, it reduced risk for everyone else. And reducing risk is one of the most valuable services in any system. This reframes scarcity. Scarcity is not always something you suffer from. It can be something you deliberately build around consistency, patience, and focus. When you occupy a role others cannot easily replace, pressure moves away from you. TSMC teaches that power does not require dominance. It requires indispensability. And indispensability comes from solving the hardest, least glamorous problem better than anyone else. But what happens when this hidden power collides with today's unstable world? Today, TSMC sits at the center of forces far bigger than technology: geopolitics, national security, economic stability. The factory that once optimized quietly is now watched constantly. Every government understands the same uncomfortable truth: whoever controls advanced manufacturing controls the pace of progress. That is why chip supply is no longer treated like oil or commodities. It is treated like oxygen. You feel this shift even if you do not follow politics. When prices rise, when products launch late, when innovation feels slower than promised, these are signals of a system stretched around a single constraint. TSMC's existence forces the world to confront a reality it avoided for decades. Efficiency created dependence. Dependence created fragility. And fragility forces power to reveal itself. The company did not seek dominance. But history rarely asks permission. It assigns roles based on who solved the hardest problem first. And now, every future roadmap quietly asks the same question: can the factory keep running? Because if stability breaks here, nothing downstream stays predictable. This story is not meant to create fear. It is meant to create clarity. TSMC shows how power actually forms, not through noise, not through speed, but through patience, focus, and occupying the one place the system cannot bypass. You may not run factories or shape global supply chains, but the principle applies everywhere: in careers, in businesses, in decisions about where to invest your energy. When you stop chasing attention and start building reliability, leverage shifts quietly in your favor. That is how systems reward those who think long-term. And that is how invisible work becomes undeniable power. If you felt something click during this story, that is not accidental. It means you are starting to see the system beneath the surface. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Because every empire hides a rule, and the next one shapes your future too.